What's going on, everybody? What's going on? Appreciate everybody coming through. Welcome to the Off Base Podcast. I'm your host, Xavier Scruggs, and today we're coming to you live from Fanatics Fest, the Javits Center here in NYC. We got a special guest today, 12-time All-Star, the member of the 3,000 Hit Club, and baseball's Hall of Famer, Wade Boggs.
Hey, hey, hey! New York City! What's up, Xavier? What's up, my brother?
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
This one's going to be special. This one's going to be... I got to kick it off. First of all, thank you for being here. I got to kick it off with the Boston stuff already. Rafael Devers traded over to the Giants, playing this weekend. I got to get your thoughts on the whole Rafael Devers situation in Boston and how that was handled.
Well, the thing about it is, if Rafael Devers had said, I'm going to play first base for the Boston Red Sox, he'd still be there.
Yeah, yeah.
I understand that he came out and said he was mistreated or anything like that, but I think 300 large speaks for itself.
That's a lot of money, yeah.
and when they tell you jump, you
Yeah.
say how high.
Right,
but
right.
I understand the situation. They went out and got Bregman and made the defense better and told him to put away the glove. But Bregman got hurt. He could have gone back and played third, or he could have gone to first and sort of solidified an offense that I thought was going north.
Right, right.
The offense was absolutely going north, but he was unhappy. Front office was unhappy, so there's the door.
Hopefully we find the Red Sox, in a better situation after that fact, right? Obviously it hurts losing a guy like that's had so much production, but now it's time to move on. I want to ask for you. You had 11 years with the Red Sox. Then free agent went over to the Yankees. What was that reception like when you came back to Boston? Because he's going to may get something similar, may get something different. What was that reception like for you?
Well, Fenway Park holds 34,500, and I think 34,500 were booing when I walked up to the plate. But my return back to Fenway Park, I went 4 for 4.
Yeah.
So the boos at the end of the night sort of started turning to cheers. And,
yes.
But I love New York, but Boston's my home. I have to say that. And went to Hall of Fame with a B on my hat. And there's one guy that is 363 in Fenway Park lifetime average, and that's Ted Williams. Mine's 368, so I got him by a few points.
Now, obviously, the game has changed a little bit in a sense of how guys...
A little bit? Okay.
Well, I'm thinking specifically about from a hitting standpoint, right? You were known being such a contact guy, battling in the box, getting your knocks. And, the game has changed in a sense of where power is so important. Guys will sacrifice those good at-bats for power. And even for me, I felt like it was so important not to strike out even during my own time. But now you see guys sacrificing that a little bit. How have you liked some of the changes that you've seen in the game, and what are some of the changes that you maybe don't like as much?
Well, I think the one thing that you have to look at from a perspective, look at the power that the Yankees have.
Yeah.
And how they struggle in the postseason. It's not that, okay, the Yankees have hit 200 home runs during the season. How many of those 200 counted?
Right, right.
I mean, did they hit it in an 11-1 game or a 15-2 game or something along those lines? That's why they struggle in the postseason, because they don't manufacture runs. When you've got a team that can manufacture runs, guys that set the table. And that was my job in Boston, to lead off.
Yeah.
I never stole bases, but I scored 100 runs every year.
Right.
One year I tied Ricky Henderson at 135 runs. I stole 2 bases. He stole 101. So, I mean, when you get into that fact, you've got to be able to manufacture runs.
Yes, yes.
And in this day and age, the power's great, but you have to be able to have the table setters for the big guys coming up.
Right.
I mean, what Judge is doing right now, he's hit 380, 370 or something like that. He's in an awful slump right now. He's in an awful slump.
Right.
It's not that the pitchers figured him out. He's just struggling. And will that 380 wind up at 320?
Right.
Or will it wind up at 280?
Right.
But he's not going to stay at 380 the whole season.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that body makeup doesn't allow you to do that.
Well, the game is, like you said, is about adjustments too, right? Guys are going to adjust to you and how they're facing you, and you got to adjust back. I think for you, do you think you would have been able to make the adjustment at least to be able to play kind of in this day's age of playing with a little bit more power, make that adjustment to be able to, whether it be drive the ball a little bit more, or you would have stuck with your same game in today's game?
I think when you do generations of how this guy would have fared here or this guy would have done this.
Yeah, it's hard to compare, right?
Everyone says that guys throw harder nowadays. I disagree with that. The guns are different. This is my opinion.
Yeah.
Back when they used to shoot our guns, they would register at home plate. Now the guns do it out of the hand.
Right, right.
No, you're telling me that Nolan Ryan doesn't throw 100 miles an hour? I can kiss your horse's rear end, but it's one of those things. And you're telling me that Roger Clemens doesn't throw 100 miles an hour? I mean, we had guys that threw hard in our day, but they threw hard down.
Yeah.
Now everybody throws up.
Right, right, yeah.
So for me to make that adjustment, it'd be very simple. I don't swing at the ball up. So, and normally the umpires don't call that high pitch.
Right.
Normally. So I think my walks would go up considerably. I'd probably walk 150, 200 times a year probably with the way they pitch nowadays. No one pitches down. And to that fact, I don't know why guys keep swinging at the ball up. They can't hit it. And if you do, you're just going to pop it up. So
I want to ask you, as far as you mentioned guys like Roger Clemens, Nolan Ryan, the toughest guys you faced, and what those at-bats were like for you.
Well, probably number one that stands out is Randy Johnson. I mean, he's tall, ugly, and wild. I can say that because we're good friends now. I couldn't say that when I played against him because he'd drill me. But the good thing about Randy is he tipped all of his pitches. And it sort of helped on my end because when his glove was open, it was a slider. So I knew that I wasn't going to get domed. But
still tough enough to hit.
Never really did any damage off of him. But, yeah, he was tough. He really was.
We'll be right back with more from Wade Boggs on the Off Base Podcast. Welcome back to the Off Base Podcast at Fanatics Fest.
Is there someone in today's game that you enjoy watching that maybe style could be a little similar to yours? Third baseman that you like, somebody that you like that's, okay, I like his game, I enjoy watching him play. I feel like that's something that can stick, obviously, with success.
I think one guy that stands out for me is Bobby Witt Jr. He goes about his daily activities and doesn't worry about everybody wondering about Bobby Witt Jr.
Right.
He doesn't want to stand out. He leads by example, and I think he's fallen into that same mold of George Brett, to where George never really, I mean, you knew George Brett was there, and he was such a great dynamic player, but you never, he wasn't one of those that always wanted people, hey, this is George Brett,
right.
kind of an attitude.
Like, look at me.
Exactly,
that
the me.
Right.
And a lot of guys say there's no I in team, but there's a hell of a lot of me. It's one of those. But I think that Bobby Witt understands the game because of his dad.
Right.
He's been around the game, understands players, how this is how you get the job done. And for me, I just enjoy watching him play.
Yeah, he's a special player. Obviously got all the tools that you need in a shortstop, and a guy that, is a franchise player as well. I also think of, for me, just some of the characteristics of an Alex Bregman as well. Very contact-oriented, line drives all over the field, uses the whole field very well. Good glove over at third base as well. that's another one of those guys that I feel like his game has some characteristics of your game as well.
Well, coincidentally, he probably hit in one of the greatest ballparks, Houston. I mean, with that short porch in left field, he figured out how to use it.
Right.
Now, he comes over to Boston, and he's got the same situation.
Right, right.
I mean, granted, the Crawford boxes are a little bit lower than the 37-foot wall there in Fenway Park. Some of his high fly balls will be doubles rather than homers, but he does have that same style of play. They brought over a Gold Glover and increased the defense, and he knows how to hit in Fenway Park.
Right.
He stays away from right field, and even when you pitch him away, he can still pull the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that about his game because it's something that'll stay consistent, right? It's something that as you continue to get older, that's going to be big. Superstitions. I know you were superstitious. Obviously, you talk about this. It's something that happened in your career. What were you most superstitious about during your career? And are there things you're still superstitious about now after your career?
Well, there's 278 players in the Hall of Fame, and I'm the only one with superstitious on his plaque. So that sort of tells you a little bit about what's going on. Probably the big thing was the chicken, that I had to have chicken every day before the game. And one funny story, we were in Milwaukee, and I used to eat at the Clock restaurant every time, and they had wonderful pan-fried chicken. And I would go in there every time we were in Milwaukee, walk in, and the owner says, "Hey, Wade, sorry, we got some bad news." I said, "What's that?" He said, "The radio station came and bought up all of our chicken." So I said, "Oh, well." So I go back to the Pfister Hotel, have a chicken sandwich or something, and go to the ballpark.
Haunted hotel.
The haunted hotel. You've been there. And so I go to the ballpark. Well, the security guy at the door at 3:30 says, "There's a gentleman here to see you." Well, it was the owner of the Clock restaurant. He had gone to the grocery store and cooked me up some chicken and brought it to the ballpark.
Wow.
So I had a really good day, 3 for 5, 4 RBIs, scored 3 runs, couple doubles. And after the game, the radio station came up to interview me after the game and said, "Well, you had a good game, but you didn't have your chicken." I said, "Well, contrary to belief, the owner of the Clock restaurant bought my chicken this afternoon, so that's why I had such a good game." But the chicken was probably the biggest one. And I had probably anywhere from 70 to 75 that I had to go through in the course of a day.
Oh, my goodness.
Which is, I think in layman's terms, it's called OCD.
Yeah.
And but thank God I only have a couple lucky fishing hats now.
Okay.
I don't really have to wake up at the same time all the time and eat the same thing. I've cut the chicken back to about 5 days a week.
Wow, that's awesome. I wasn't a superstitious type of guy, but I could definitely see, I've seen some of those guys that are like, I got to shower at the same shower, right? And if so-and-so was showering
I had that one too.
Yeah, that one too.
Yep.
If whoever was showering next to me, if I hit 2 home runs, you better come shower with me again.
Exactly.
No, I was thinking about my favorite player growing up. I grew up in San Diego. Tony Gwynn was my favorite player. And you guys' careers ran congruently with each other. Was there any of that rivalry because you guys were the same high batting average type guys, like guys that were so consistent? Was there any of that competition rivalry between the two of you?
The good thing about that is that we were in different leagues.
Right,
I think it would have been a lot different had he been in American League or I'd been in the National League. I had my hands full with George Brett, Rod Carew, Paul Molitor, and Kirby Puckett and all of these guys. And I think Tony might have had it a little easier over in the National League. But I always used to kid him about that, about you don't have any guys that can hit in the National League. Why don't you come over to the American League? We got a bunch of those guys, and they fall out of trees. But, yeah, he was a mirror image of myself. He wound up winning 8 batting titles. I had 5. But, yeah, whatever Tony did, it was like, okay, Wade Boggs just did the same exact thing in the other league.
Now, growing up, was there anyone that you modeled your game after? Because I'm always thinking about, some of those guys that really we look at and our batting stances start to come together. Some of the things we see players do, we want to emulate and put in our own game. Who was that for you?
It had to be Pete Rose. God rest his soul. Yeah, I always loved the way when he'd walk, he'd run down to first. the head-first slide, running over catchers. I felt sorry for Ray Fosse in the All-Star game, but yeah, just the style of play. And I coached high school baseball for 21 years, and I used to tell kids that when you look at a Pete Rose type of player, it takes no ability to hustle.
Yeah, yes.
It takes zero ability to hustle. And it stands out, too.
Right.
And that was one thing that when you went to a high school baseball game of Wharton High School, you knew that they were coached by Wade Boggs.
Right.
Because if they walked, they ran to first, and they hustled all the time. And if they popped up a ball to the infield, they were standing on second base if they caught it.
We're going.
And so I love Pete, and I love Reggie. Reggie was my other go-to guy. I wore 9 because of Reggie and Ted Williams. And when I got drafted by the Red Sox, I asked them in the minor leagues, can I get 9? And they said, son, that number's retired. But, yeah, I think those are 2 great guys to emulate growing up. When I got to the big leagues, it was George Brett.
Yeah.
He was my go-to guy. I love watching George hit, and wound up naming my son after George.
Yeah.
Named him Brett, not George. So
that's awesome.
But yeah, he's my son's godfather, and I mean those are 3 really big names right there.
That's really special. Obviously, some really amazing players too. It's hard not to sit up here and ask you about the 3,000 hit that you had, because not well known for hitting a lot of home runs, but a home run on the 3,000 hit. Break it down a little bit.
They didn't have that on the bingo board, I guarantee that. That was one of those. Yeah, my son was the bat boy for the whole run, going to up to 3,000.
Wow.
And we're driving across Howard Franklin Bridge, going to the Tropicana Field that Saturday night for the game. And I said, what do you think, buddy? I need 3 knocks tonight. He says, you're going to get it tonight. And I said, I don't know. I'm facing Charlie Nagy. I'm only like 215 lifetime off of Charlie Nagy. And he says, no, you'll be fine. So the umpires got him to rub up the balls, the special 3,000 balls. And Laz Diaz was the umpire behind the plate. And he said, what do you think of your son's rub job on the balls? I couldn't see any of the stitches. They were all black. So Laz Diaz handed me a towel, and I rubbed all the mud off of the balls.
Too dark.
So I could at least see some stitches.
You got to see it.
So when we got to $29.99, they switched out all the balls. And, back up a little bit. When I got $29.99, I'm standing on first, and Jim Thome looks at me and goes, this is the most amazing situation I've ever been in. And I said, Jim, for me also.
Wow.
I said, I played my whole life for one more at bat. So they brought in Chris Haney to face me, and Larry Rothschild, our manager at the time for the Devil Rays, calls me back to the dugout. And he says, we're going to pinch hit for you. Chris Haney was left-handed. My son's eyes got about that big. And he says, you're going to pinch hit for my dad? And I said, Larry, see this bat? I'm going to break it over your skull if you pinch hit for me. I said, I've waited all my life for this one at bat. And I walked up, and everything just slowed down on that 2-2 curveball.
Wow.
Everything just slowed down, and right when I hit it, I knew it was gone. And Major League Baseball and everybody that was there was telling my son, okay, when he hits a single, run down to first, pick it up, and hand it to him. Mm-hmm. Well, my son was at home plate, trying to figure out how to pick up home plate and hand it to me. So, yeah, I don't think it was the Vegas odds of me hitting a home run for 3,000. And coincidentally, I was the first player to ever do that. And wow. I went up to Mr. Aaron. I said, Mr. Aaron, you have 755 home runs. I said, what was your 3,000? He said, a double. And I said, mine was a homer. And I said, I didn't hit many, but most of them were monumental. But it was such a special night. Wound up getting 3,000 with the home run. And Sunday was pretty rough. Larry Rothschild said, you have to play the weekend. Sunday was pretty rough, but I wound up hitting a ground rule double and for 3001. And Larry pulled me out of the game after I did that, so that was a good thing.
You'll take a rough Sunday.
There you go. It was a rough night.
After doing that, you got to celebrate that. How special was it to do it in Tampa?
Everyone asked what it was like to go back and play at home. I don't think I would have enjoyed it in the middle of my career or the beginning, but at the end, it was time. And I didn't really want to leave the Yankees because we were starting to win. But I think Mr. Steinbrenner and Mr. Namoli sort of had a working deal that they weren't going to pick up my option in New York and allow me to become a free agent to where I could go home and become a franchise player for the Tampa Bay Devil Rays and go home and play in front of family and friends and chase 3,000. And chasing it at home, it was very special. You know, when you sleep in your own bed, drive your own car, and it made it very special. And it was such a wonderful night. We had 44,000 people at Tropicana Field, and I've gone back a couple times to look, and the flash bulbs were unbelievable. And it's a wonder I even saw the ball at all because of all the flash bulbs going off. But it was a very special night.
We'll be back with more of the Off Base podcast after this. Welcome back to the Off Base podcast at Fanatics Fest.
I live in Tampa, Wesley Chapel. And I think about Plant High School, the powerhouse that it is.
The University of Plant.
Yes, and
we've
now seen, you know, obviously some great players come out of that high school, but maybe speak on what you've seen with Kyle Tucker, who's come out of that high school, Pete Alonso, both of them doing it at a very high level right now. And one of them obviously in New York, Pete Alonso.
Right, and I coached against both of those guys.
Wow.
And knew that they were phenomenal players in high school. And I knew their success and road to the big leagues wasn't going to be very short. I mean, very long. And, I mean, they're both dynamic players. They're very quiet players.
Yeah,
you know, they're very unassuming and go about their business. And it's going to be interesting to see where Kyle Tucker winds up, whether or not he's going to stay a Cub or you never know. He might wind up in New York.
Yeah.
They get a good one with that right field porch for him.
Yes.
That'd be something else. But there are so many guys that have come out of just the Tampa Bay area.
Yeah.
Xavier, I think that's the thing that we're the most proud of. And it all goes back to Al Lopez, who was the original.
Yeah.
Was the original Hall of Famer from Tampa, and then you start talking about Tony La Russa and Lou Piniella and Steve Garvey and Fred McGriff and Tino Martinez and just on and Doc Gooden and Gary Sheffield and oh my goodness, you just go one after another after Dave Magadan. I can go on for days. And I'll put Tampa up against California or Texas or anybody because that's how good the Tampa Bay area is.
It's special, and I get to see it firsthand now too. I want to go back to your playing days and your unique batting stance too. We talked about, you know, Pete Rose, who you kind of emulated and loved watching his game. How did you get to such a unique batting stance yourself, and how did it evolve over the years?
Well, my father, when I was a junior in high school, or a senior rather, my father sat me down and made me read The Science of Hitting by Ted Williams. So I sort of put my hands where Ted's are on the book and sort of kept them there. I never really moved around in the box a lot. I wanted to stay in one place so it didn't move the curveball back or forward or anything like that. I knew exactly where a curveball was going to cross the plate every time. So and my father taught me how to hit with the weight theory. So I always hit the ball to left field anyway.
Right.
So when I was drafted, my father said, Fenway Park was built for you.
Yes.
And he was absolutely 100% right, because the way I just got a little stronger and started utilizing the wall. And if the wind's blowing out, I knew I had two. I just had to figure out how I could get the third one. But it was very simple. It was a very simple process, and not a lot of working parts.
Right.
I see some guys nowadays. There are a lot of working parts, and you can see
A lot
how
of movement.
they can struggle.
Yes, yeah.
And it's not going back to the batting cage and working things out. It's all the integral moving parts that they have.
Yeah.
Their hands are moving, their feet are moving, their head's moving, their hips. Everything's out of whack.
Right.
And you got, at some point in time, you've got to sit there, keep it simple.
Yes.
That's the thing. You got to try to keep it simple.
Yeah.
And when you keep it simple, it's less room for error.
Well, we can't be at Fanatics Fest without asking you about some of your most prized possessions that you have. Is there anything that you specifically keep, whether it be balls, jerseys, bats, anything that you hold very near and dear to your heart?
Well, I have my first hit, my 1,000th hit, my 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, and 3,000. Actually, Mike Hogan was the one that caught the 3,000 hit home run and gave it back to me.
Okay.
So I do have the 3,000 in a shadow box with the bat and the ball. I have all my silver bats, my gold gloves. These are prized possessions. I mean, it's the hardware that you get throughout the course of your career, and when people come over and hang out or something like that, they like to go in and look at the hardware.
Yeah.
And but balls are something. My first home run and various things like that. But as far as collecting from other players, I never did that.
Okay, yeah.
I probably should have. It would have been a great retirement thing for my kids,
Yeah.
to where they could turn around and sell a George Brett jersey or something. But yeah, I keep stuff like that. I'm not to the point that I need to sell it.
Right,
and
right.
I don't think I would. I would give it to my kids before I would try to sell it. But my super collector in Chicago, he has everything that I've ever worn or anything like that. So
all of your stuff.
all of my stuff.
Wow.
He's got a man cave. I'm going to it actually during the National in Chicago. But Richard Davis is his name. He's phenomenal. Oh my goodness. He has if my face or name are on anything, he has it. He has my shower shoes from New York,
That's
Boston,
wild.
and Tampa Bay, and he has everything. But yeah, it one of those. One thing that I do have that I got from the Yankees was the table that sat between Mickey Mantle and Whitey Ford locker. Nick
Right.
Priori gave me their table, and Mickey Mantle had carved some things into it, and Whitey Ford had carved some things into it.
Wow.
So I have that, and it's very special. And so when I left New York, I was walking out the door, and Nick Priori walked over to me and says, "Hey, I want you to have this." And it's pretty special.
That's pretty cool.
It's pretty special.
Wow. Man, we obviously have a lot of athletes walking around here. We have a lot of actors walking around here, too. I just saw Kevin Costner not too long ago. But you also have an acting career, too.
Swamp Shark. Who out there seen Swamp Shark? Come on now. It's a sci-fi thriller. Thank you. Yeah. I played Deputy Stanley in that one.
Simpsons. We've
Simpsons, Cheers, Always Sunny. I know everybody's seen Always Sunny.
Yeah, we've seen.
Yeah.
How did you get started with some of those acting deals?
Well, the first gig was Cheers. That was the first one. And rest in peace, Norm, and Kirstie Alley as well. My agent group had sent out flyers to all the Boston-based shows.
Okay.
And Cheers, boy, they bit hook, line, and sinker. And they said, yeah, we'll rewrite the Bar Wars for your episode. So they were going back and forth with Gary's Old Town Tavern and doing pranks on each other. And then Gary comes in and says, okay, we're going to send Wade Boggs over to sign some autographs. And so that was the first acting gig. But I really enjoy it.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And I mean, I gotta feel like it's an experience to be able to do obviously something different that challenges you a little bit in a different way too, and get the heart pumping a little bit too.
Well, it's easy to play yourself, but it was kind of difficult to play Deputy Stanley because I had to call Ron Guidry. I was a Louisiana deputy, so I had to talk to Ron Guidry for 2 weeks just to get that Cajun accent.
Oh my goodness, that's wild.
It was a lot of fun, and it was Robert Davi and D.B. Sweeney and Christy Swanson. It was a lot of fun. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Swamp Shark.
Now, you are the international game fish record holder for the longest bluefish ever. Talk to us a little bit about your fishing. You still enjoy it?
That's my passion, hunting and fishing. And I just completed my Royal Billfish Slam, which I caught all 9 billfish.
Wow. Sailfish,
Marlin, swordfish, spearfish. So I just completed that one. And yeah, I was co-host on a show called Fin Chasers, and we would go out and try to break world records. And I tied the striper record in one day and then broke the bluefish record in the same day. And then 2 weeks later, I had my wife down in lake down in South Florida. She broke the largemouth bass record 4 times.
She did.
So she had 4 world records on largemouth bass.
She knows what she's doing too.
So the fishing runs in the family. But yeah, I'm either in Costa Rica or the Galapagos or somewhere chasing billfish all over the world.
Is that what you enjoy doing during the off season as well? When you were playing, were you able to fish, hunt at all during the off season?
Well, basically all the time, but we would fish during the season.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we would. Kansas City had some great largemouth bass ponds and stuff, and most of the pitchers are going out playing golf in the morning. And,
yeah.
And me and the other guys are going out and trying to catch fish.
I love that. I feel like there's such a value in kind of being able to take your mind off the game a little bit too. I feel like those things allow you some time to relax, be able to think about some other things and then be able to lock it in once it comes 2, 3 o'clock coming back to the field.
Absolutely. You get away from it a little bit because it is a grind day in and day out, as you well know, Xavier. It's a grind, and sometimes you need to push that reset button and reset that mind a little bit.
What advice do you have to young athletes that want to be able to have the same type of success that you had, the same type of consistency, the same day in, day out work ethic? What do you tell young players? Obviously, you know you've coached, but what is your advice to those guys?
I get that question asked quite a bit, and the one thing that I say, then they say, what advice do you have for young players?
Yeah.
And I said, get a wiffle ball and bat. Go find a vacant lot and play some wiffle ball.
Yeah.
Get off of the Nintendo and all of that.
Right.
That doesn't produce eye-hand coordination. I don't care what anybody says. And I think that when we would play stick ball or cork ball or wiffle ball, it just increases that eye-hand coordination. And you're out with your buddies, and I don't care. It's 95. It's 100 degrees. We were out from sunup to dark playing in a vacant lot. You go buy a vacant lot nowadays, and it's a vacant lot.
Yeah.
That's about all it is. But I think that one thing that I stress to my players when I was coaching high school baseball is that you have to be all in. You have to be in 100%. It's a lot of work. It's a grind.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I ever wanted to do. I only wanted to play professional baseball.
Wow.
I got that opportunity and spent 5.5 years in the minor leagues. But once you start playing professional baseball, then you want to make it to the big leagues.
Right.
Once you make it to the big leagues, now you want to make an all-star team.
Yes.
Now you make an all-star team, and you say, I want a lengthy career. And God willing, if you're healthy enough, then you're going to play enough in the big leagues to have that. But you've got to be all in.
Yeah.
You've got to be all in. You just can't use it as a part-time job.
Right.
And sometimes I see some of the big leaguers treat it as a part-time job.
Right.
Where they're not setting too good of an example for younger kids when they pop up a ball and trot down to first.
Right, right.
Some managers are taking them out of the ball game and making them sit on the bench and things like that. You don't see that too often.
Right, right.
But I think that sets an example. If you can tell a star player that makes $300 million to run out a ball.
Yeah. Everybody else falls in line.
This is what I used to tell my kids. If you have average speed down to first base, which is 4.2, and you hit 4 ground balls in a game, that's 16.8 seconds I ask you to hustle.
Right. That's not a lot.
That's not a lot.
Yeah. I love that, Wade. I appreciate your time here. Everybody, thank you for coming out. Obviously, here with the Off Base Podcast, give Wade a big hand. But, man, really special conversation. I thank you. And everybody here, thank you for joining us at Off Base here at Javits Center, Fanatics Fest in New York City. You can catch our podcast on MLB Network at 11 a.m. Eastern. Also on YouTube, so make sure you subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you guys next time.